I'd also like to thank Kevin Courtois from the U.S. Chamber for coming today to be our keynote speaker for Advocacy for All Chambers. And Kevin and I, every time we see each other, like, how many classes we did at IOM last year? Kevin was my instructor for a couple of different classes at IOM last year, and being able to take things away from him and use them in a chamber of the majority of the size that is NOACC chambers, that small to medium, you guys can do this, and Kevin has some great ways to be able to advocate for your members and your business community in that world at a smaller level, so you don't have to think that you have to be the state chamber to do these things. So now I would like to introduce Tressa Hardin from Aventura World. She is going to say a few things, and then she is going to introduce Kevin.
Kevin Courtois is Vice President of the Great Lakes region in the Government Affairs Division of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And to achieve the U.S. Chamber's public policy goals, he activates and maintains legislative, political, media, and grass tops resources in Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. You were busy. And he also leads the Chamber's efforts to strengthen its relationships with members of Congress through member businesses, associations, and local and state chambers of commerce across the region. Before joining the Chamber, he spent 5 years in Washington, D.C., working for Senator Chuck Grassley and Finance Committee during its consideration of the Affordable Care Act. He also served on Senator Grassley's Judiciary Committee, where he handled health policy issues and federal judicial nominations. And while working on Capitol Hill, he attended evening classes at the George Mason University School of Law before completing his last year at Northwestern Law School in Chicago, where he currently resides. And Kevin is going to be presenting the keynote address about advocacy for chambers of all sizes. And that is so important, that advocacy. So thank you for doing all of this.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for that warm welcome and great introduction. It is an honor to be here today. Thank you to Rachel for setting up this summit. It's an honor to be at the inaugural summit. Thanks to Cindy and Missy for inviting me to be a part of this NOACC experience. So I'm Kevin Courtois, Vice President of the Great Lakes Regional Office for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The U.S. Chamber is based in Washington, D.C. I'm based in Chicago. We are one of 7 regional offices for the U.S. Chamber. I have 2 colleagues, Ryan Gleason and Maggie Wooden. And yes, we're busy storming 6 different states. But I've got to tell you, I love my job. I love the chamber industry, chamber world as we call it. And it's really great that specifically after leaving DC, getting back into what we call the real world, you get to work with local and state chambers of, I get to work with local and state chambers of commerce and advocate for the American business community while working with you, your members, and our members as well. So, over my 8+ years at the chamber, I worked with probably hundreds of chambers of commerce, and it's a vast 6-state region. And I know I'm not reaching every chamber yet, so if we haven't met yet, please do introduce yourself after this. Would love to get involved and connect with you and talk more about advocacy and the details. As Rachel mentioned, I do teach at the Institute for Organization Management, IOM. And we were kind of talking about what we might discuss in this keynote address today. I didn't want to turn it into a class, but if we get to a point where you want to, we certainly can do that. So when I was invited to speak about advocacy, I thought, all right, we'll give maybe a little bit of a rallying cry and an update on what the U.S. Chamber is working on and how we can all work together to achieve our goals. Most of my remarks at local chambers begin with something that we all know at the U.S. Chamber is that we can't do what we do in D.C. without our federation. That's what we call our local and state chambers of commerce, our nationwide network of chambers. And around the region, I often tell a story of how the U.S. Chamber came to be. So the U.S. Chamber was founded by local chambers. So it all came together. If you go to our headquarters, there's a plaque with all the founding members of the chamber. They pooled their funds, bought this prime piece of land across from the White House so that the business community could have a national voice in Washington, D.C. Now, because of that investment in the funding of the chambers, our enduring relationship with local chambers, really lasts. And our CEO, Suzanne Clark, likes to say, because of that lasting relationship, we can be in Washington without being of Washington. And of course, we keep these regional offices to serve that purpose. So We have a national chamber. We're founded by local chambers located at the seat of power across from the White House. So what do we do with it? What is our collective superpower as chambers of commerce? And it could be a lot of things. We're talking today about advocacy and influence. It could be our talent and expertise, our convening power, and our national and global reach. For some chambers, those are things that we're good at and that we're known for. But there is really something underlying all of it that is more powerful, more effective, and that's essential. And that is trust. Trust is our superpower. The public trusts business above all other institutions for a simple reason. Business works. It delivers results, solutions, jobs, and opportunity. And business trusts us, chambers of commerce, because we help them do it. You think back to the COVID time, and I know this organization in particular was very active. When businesses started getting shut down, when we all were looking for answers, all of our small businesses, who did they turn to? Your chambers and our chamber associations. And I, in particular, I know I was so grateful, one, to continue working, and two, to feel in that moment of need like we could actually be helpful. Our members trust us to fight, and we do it all day, every day. Then they know we'll stand up, speak out, and take the heat, even when no one else will. They also count on us to help. And that means, yes, helping government do its job so business can do theirs. Businesses can't be the only thing that works. Institutions like ours can't be the only ones that are trusted. And we believe at this moment in history and with our proximity to power, at the local level, at the state level in Columbus, and at the federal level, that we have a duty, really a patriotic duty, to leverage the trust placed in us to make a difference, to help our members, to grow businesses, and to grow our communities. So today I would just want to share 3 ways we can work together to do just that. The first is advocating for better government and smarter policies. And yes, this is buried in our mission statements, and it should be a big part of our day jobs. Whether it's the federal, state, or local level, we're uniquely positioned and trusted to help communities grow. So it's our belief at the Chamber that if we can use our collective power to push our leaders to do the hard work of governing and to pass meaningful, durable policies, meaning we're not going back and forth, administration to administration with different policies, because we all know our members need predictability, that we can strengthen our economy and we can restore some faith in government. Now, I know with recent events in the House and a lot of the political discourse that just may seem high-minded and kind of aspirational, but if you're a pessimist, you're probably in the wrong industry, right? One thing I love about chambers is we can get stuff done, and it's a positive attitude that helps us get there. So for the U.S. Chamber's part, we optimize the relationship between government and business at scale, right? We have the collective resources, and we have our nationwide network of the Federation across the country, around the world. We have the domestic and international policy expertise, the convening power, and the coalition building, vast and diverse networks, one of the best law firms in the country. So we've been growing that as more and more policies come out through the administration, where we need to do some of our advocacy work in the courts. And then we have our digital platforms like which is our small business website, which helps over 20,000 businesses each day. No one else really has the reach and resources of the Chamber, on that meaningful impact, major scale. But there's one thing I want to really emphasize is we can't do it without all of you, without our local chambers. You are the stewards of trust in your cities and communities, and we know that trust is highest at the local level, where you are. You're the face of the Chamber brand, and your work fosters a strong local business community. So you are leading the fight for the local issues on Main Street. You're the ones, with your ears to the ground. Local chambers give us intelligence and insights, helping us keep our ears to the ground and in touch with job creators across the country. And you represent local businesses that can influence policymakers in a powerful way. Add up the collective strength of local chambers working together, and we are in the best position to advance a pro-business agenda in Washington, Columbus, in your communities and your regions. At the federal level, we have several big priorities that we have to work together on right now. One is over-regulation that increasingly seeks to put the fates of business under greater government control. The administration is racing to issue regulations on topics that cut across all American industry, including securities, banking, competition, labor, climate, pharmaceuticals, and more. These regulations are driven by an ideology imposed on our members without transparency, accountability, or clarity. And that has an immense chilling effect on business, growth, innovation, hiring. Whether that work happens in Congress, in the agencies, or in the courts, as I mentioned, our members continue to count on us to lead that fight. So another shared priority that we're tackling is the workforce shortages. And this is the number one issue that I hear about when traveling around the region. I know you're dealing with it and hearing from your members as well. We can provide some relief through business-led solutions like talent pipeline management, which we now have up and running in 44 states. You may have also heard of the chamber-led initiative, the Business Leads Fellowship Program, but it's not going to be just business-led solutions. We also need policy solutions like immigration reform. So earlier this year, the U.S. Chamber launched the Liberty Campaign. And if you're an acronym person, this is the Legal Immigration Border Enforcement Reform this year. Did someone spell it out for me? Is that right? So that's the Liberty Campaign. And while it's a kind of a fun acronym, we had grown this to include more than 440 businesses and associations in all 50 states, and that includes 8 chambers of commerce here in Ohio. And we'll get into some of the details of how, but this is one of my goals, is to start growing that participation in our coalition letters, and really an easy way for, if you're a smaller chamber without those resources, an easy way for you to get involved in advocacy. But with the Liberty Campaign, together with that unified voice and a whole lot of pressure, to be honest, we can push Congress to enact, measured, secure our border, improve the legal immigration system, and help us fill those workforce needs. We believe we can get that done this year. We're also bringing together a big coalition to fix the broken permitting system. It stalls our projects in the states and the communities that we need to build and be competitive. So our campaign, the Permit America to Build campaign, we've united 350 state and local chambers, including 7 in Ohio, as well as leading business, policy, and labor organizations. We're demanding meaningful reform at the federal level, and we'll need continued support from our local partners to get that done in a bipartisan way. So another vital issue that's on our priority list is trade. It's not been really on this administration's priority list. There's quite frankly been an utter lack of a trade agenda, and it's undermining some of our economic growth, business growth, and job creation. We need to remind leaders that 1 in every 5 U.S. jobs are supported by trade. We need to remind them that 97% of all exporters are small businesses. So we need to get louder, use our facts, the data, the stories that we tell that will make it very hard for this administration to justify an anti-trade agenda. And finally, we have to help break the gridlock in Washington that stokes uncertainty for our businesses and stops that trust. The U.S. House of Representatives recently went 3 weeks without a speaker. We're on, we have yet another looming government shutdown, with funding running out on November 24th. Some politicians you'll see making false, cynical arguments that people don't actually notice when the government shuts down. But the real world impacts are significant. Mortgage and loan applications are delayed, including small business loans, benefit verification for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, delayed as well. Millions of Americans lose child care benefits. During the last government shutdown, it cost the United States $11 billion. So we must convince our federal leaders to reject the notion that a shutdown is inevitable and make smart choice to keep government open. So one thing is clear on all these priorities: our advocacy is more powerful and more influential with your direct engagement and storytelling. Real stories, real businesses, and real impact will move policymakers and move the needle on all of these priorities. So today, I'm asking you to share your stories. We want to make our communications more compelling and our advocacy more personal, and we do that with your help. whether it's a delayed permitting project, costing your city or town productivity, a community bank that is struggling under new CFPB rules, a company that can't meet its growth goals because of unfilled jobs, or a small business whose entire livelihood is dependent on exports. Help us bring the power of those stories and the trust of your chambers to Washington to win the hearts and minds of reasonable lawmakers who can do something about it. And do so, reach out to me and let me share some of those stories with me. I also want to talk about fostering civic trust, something at the very core, pushing our lawmakers to enact these policies that the public supports and that business needs might help restore some trust in Washington. But we know that mistrust is a much deeper problem entrenched across the country. So another way we can and must make a difference in this moment is by fostering civic trust. And we think that starts with civics and education. We believe the best way to elevate civics as a national priority is through this federation of chambers, of state and local chambers, And, you have really an unmatched ability to reach deep into your communities and be a trusted voice for founding principles and basic civic knowledge. And a core message and foundational belief we must bring into public consciousness is how our political and economic systems, democracy and free enterprise have been intertwined throughout our history. One of the most exciting ways we're advancing this priority is through the Chamber Foundation's National Civics Bee. Have you guys heard of the National Civics Bee? I know we have, we kind of kicked it off in a few pilot states. And this year we were in 54 competitions in 9 states, including Ohio. I got to attend the state Civics Bee Championship in the Capitol. Next year we're going to hit 30 states. It's going to continue here in Ohio. It's apolitical and nonpartisan. The mission and the impact are the same wherever we're, whether we're in inner city or in rural Ohio. Working with you and chambers across the county, we can scale this and make a real difference. Some of you may be already involved in the work, but I didn't see any hands. But please get in touch with me if this is something you're interested in. I know there was a lot of excitement and an interest in this in Columbus, and if you can help promote it or be a part of one of those local competitions, it's certainly a way that we can start restoring some civics education and civics trust. There's something else you can do to help advance this national priority, and that's just get a better understanding of the state civics education in your local community. So when you go back after you have a great time tonight at the NOACC Awards, go back, call the head of your city or county board of education and ask them how civics is being taught in the classroom. And if the answer is they're not teaching high school quality civics, or worse, that they aren't teaching it at all, then it's on us, Chambers of Commerce, to demand change. To truly restore trust in Washington, in government, and the institutions that support our democracy, we have to start from the ground up. So I'd close, some of these formal remarks just by saying, with the third way that we must leverage our trust to help our members and our country, protecting, defending, and promoting America's free enterprise system. The free enterprise system is under attack, and protecting the free enterprise system is our enduring mission as Chambers of Commerce. It's what we're founded on. We promote and protect the free enterprise system because it is the single most powerful driver of human progress and economic opportunity in Illinois, extending history, and lifting more people out of poverty, solving global problems at scale, and delivering advancements that improve lives and change the world. Yet, as I mentioned, more and more, our free enterprise system is under immense pressure and facing rising threats from the regulatory state, from the extreme left, the extreme right, from well-funded groups, and from well-respected academic institutions that aim to redesign our system of capitalism. Because this moment is different, our mission is more urgent than ever. We need everyone who supports free enterprise, and I hope that's every person in this room, to proudly assert the benefits of our system. Use your trusted brand and compelling voice to help people understand how free enterprise strengthens your community, how it supports families, how it creates opportunities, how it solves problems big and small, how it improves lives. This is how we counter the anti-capitalist voices in the debate. This is how we win hearts and minds. And this can help restore trust and faith in our system, in our country, in our communities, and in our future. So my call to action today is pretty simple, is get involved. If you're already involved, get louder. We share a brand, the Chamber of Commerce brand. We share a voice. We share a mission, and we share an opportunity to shape this moment in history and make the future a little bit better for our communities and our families. I just want to say thank you for your partnership, everything that you do in your communities. And once again, we can't do what we do in DC without your engagement. And we're going to move on and talk a little bit more on advocacy and some of the tactics that we can use. But first, I'll stop there and see if you have any questions before we guide a little bit more of a classroom style. Let's dig right in. All right. So if I'm your contact at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I just want to give a little bit of who I am. This is a photo of me. I look like a clueless 23-year-old because I was a clueless 23-year-old sitting on the floor of the United States Senate working for Senator Grassley. I was working in healthcare policy at a particular momentous time as we were considering the health reform legislation that was going through Congress. I got to tell you, when I started, I didn't know very much about healthcare policy. I'll tell you why this is relevant in a second. Here's a chart, a speech I wrote for a senator. I think it was one of my first speeches. It wasn't very good because I didn't know how he spoke. However, how did I end up writing speeches on healthcare policy if I didn't have that background? Well, here's a photo. Does anyone recognize the individual in this photo? It's Charles Tillman, Chicago Bears cornerback. Does anyone recognize the name Charles Tillman, Chicago Bears cornerback? All right. So AdvaMed, which is a lobbying organization for the medical device industry, hosted a lobby day in DC. And they brought Charles Tillman in to tell the story of his daughter who had a medical device that saved, it was called ECMO, that saved her when she was an infant. Now, this was a lobbying day back in 2009. That speech was probably March of 2010. We were talking about stripping the medical device tax from the healthcare reform legislation. So when I was tasked with coming up with ideas of how we're going to present this amendment to strip the medical device tax, my mind went back to that one time a lobbying, AdvaMed, the advocacy organization for the medical device industry, came to town and brought Charles Tillman to town, which brought me into the room, and I got to hear his story about his daughter. And so we ended up working with Charles Tillman and his representatives to tell their story on the Senate floor. And I think a big part, as I mentioned earlier, of what we're trying to do in the advocacy space is to tell stories. That's what makes a difference. When you're meeting with your local representatives, when you're trying to influence policy that affects your members, you need to tell those stories. And it was Charles Tillman's story, that really cut through. And I just use this as an example of how kind of effective advocacy could work. I also just think they're really funny photos as well. So this is a quote from Supreme Court Justice, basically calling on the business community to be advocates. I think he was calling out the business community for kind of going along, allowing policies to happen to them. I'm not going to read you the full quote, but he's saying that advocacy must be used aggressively and with determination, without reluctance, the reluctance that has been kind of characteristic of the business community up to that time. So why get involved with government affairs? You might be sitting there thinking, well, we haven't started this, we haven't gone down that path. Well, first, the public policy affects your members. Some of the policies that I was going through earlier, directly affect them. Some of the regulations that are coming out, I'm certain at the local level that you have something at the city, something through the city hall that's directly affecting your members. So you need to be at the table. There's the old saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, where meaning, all right, there might be a policy that's affected that's going to negatively impact your members. This big one for us, especially when we talk about smaller local chambers of commerce, is the strength in numbers, right? You represent a number of members, bring us together. We represent, a larger coalition. The U.S. Chamber alone represents the interests of over 3 million businesses, and that's including all of the local chambers and their members rolling up to us. Now, when you go into an office, you're able to talk to a member and tell them we're bringing together this, we're representing this many voices. It does make a difference. And of course, if you don't, someone else will. And I was thinking about, we always say if you don't, someone else will. So a group that might be opposed to some pro-growth policies might come in, but also organizations. So chambers of commerce, we have that trust of our members and of our institutions. And if we're not going to use that voice, another group may come in and use that voice, to further their agenda. So another big point is to fulfill your mission statement. I did a little experiment, and I was looking through, a lot of different chambers of commerce and their mission statements. A lot of them include, you're going to be the voice of business, promote economic growth and development, advocate for the business community. I even have a couple here from folks in the room. Sorry, I don't mean to call you out or put you on the spot, but I think this is a good thing in your mission statement. Cuyahoga East Chamber Advocacy for Business is the mission of the Cuyahoga East Chamber of Commerce. My new friends from Huron, we focus on being a resource and advocate for our members and local businesses. We'll fulfill our mission statements by being involved in advocacy. Now, there's different levels, and I think this is one of if you're going to take something away, where can you start? You don't have to all of a sudden have a PAC and start endorsing political candidates. It can start with education. So bringing in your members of Congress, your local elected officials, sharing information with your members, making them more informed consumers of this information. I think it's a great place to start. Something that the U.S. Chamber offers to our chamber members is, I'm happy to come to town and talk about some of the issues that are being discussed at the federal level. I know the state chamber, the Ohio Chamber, has gone around and done briefings for local chambers as well. But if you have, you have that access to your local elected officials, to your members of Congress, you can bring them in, provide access, and help, educate your members. And then the hope is then you're going to start developing a legislative agenda, a policy agenda, where then you can communicate that to your local elected officials. So now you have like a policy agenda. Now remember, politics and policy, while one influences the other, they're different. So I hear a lot of chambers who say, well, our chamber isn't political, or maybe maybe you want to be involved in advocacy and your board is telling you, well, we're not going to be political. Pro-business public policy statements and positions, they're not political either. The issues are not partisan, and it's a good place to start. Education, develop the policy agenda, and then the last would be next level, maybe getting involved with starting to track and score how, in our case, we members of Congress, you could do this at the local level as well, keeping track of how they're voting and educating your members. We developed a scorecard that we published to show the scores members of Congress and how they vote on legislation important to the business community. You can start recruiting candidates. So now we're going to start getting into the political realm, where you start recruiting candidates, supporting candidates, opposing. That's a little bit more advanced, but certainly the next level if you're looking to get there. You may also hear that it's going to jeopardize your tax status if you get involved in advocacy. That's not the case. In 1975, the tax code was changed to permit 501c6 organizations to administer and solicit funds. So if it is something you're looking to go to that next level, you are able to do it. Here, it's not our job, or our bylaws prohibit political activity. Well, the bylaws could be changed to match your mission that we talked about earlier, or your mission statement could be changed to match your bylaws. One that we hear is that someone might get mad, or we could lose members. What I hear from chambers who maybe weren't as active, and as I followed them on their journey to being more active in the government affairs advocacy space, is that their members are looking for this. They want a voice. They want someone to stand up for them, that they feel like they're a part of an organization that's influential and that matters, and that in the end they end up attracting more members. This is one quote from the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce. They said they market their advocacy as a key member benefit, and the return on investment in this area of their operation is significant. From their largest dues payer to the smallest employer, their government affairs efforts are having an impact on membership and retention. So other takeaways, if this is something that you're looking to get involved with, like, you're not alone, this is what we do. We are happy to visit your chamber and help. We provide, you see at the bottom there, GOACC training. So government affairs advocacy training. we have a presentation set up that we can walk you through. Board members, if you have any hesitancy, how do you get this started? How do you develop a policy agenda? Who do you recruit to be on your government affairs committee? Who should maybe you keep off of your government affairs committee? This is all stuff we can cover, that we do cover in our classes at IOM, but I'd be happy to come and give a more condensed version of that presentation to you. I mentioned earlier those coalition letters. Remember Liberty and Permit America to Build? This is a really easy way to contribute your voice at the federal level, where I know most chambers don't have the resources, the people to be tracking all this federal legislation. Like, that's our job, and then our job is to make this digestible and give you that opportunity to have your voice heard at the federal level. And one of the ways that we do that is through these coalition letters. Remember, strength in numbers. I send these around, usually we try to get them done toward the beginning of a legislative session when we list our priorities. You decide, what do you want to be a part of? We write them in a way where it's probably easier for you to join these letters. It's a really good place to start. And I'm happy to talk more offline about that after. As I mentioned, we're happy to come to your town and do legislative or issue-specific briefings. If there is a real interest in a particular issue, we could potentially bring an expert in from DC. And then one way is just for educating ourselves as chamber leaders too. We host regular calls. We call them our Federation Updates, where our Chief Policy Officer, Neil Bradley, issues a federal update over a call about once a month. And those updates I send around as well. Now, that's at the federal level. At the state level, I did want to plug something for the Ohio Chamber, a great partner of ours. They just launched within the past month the Ohio Chamber Action Network. I spoke with them this morning and said I would like to plug this for you. I know it's state chamber, a great leader. There's a QR code on there that they provided, which will take you to a landing page. I'll read their mission. So the Ohio Chamber Action Network exists to support capitalism and champion free enterprise and economic growth for the benefit of all Ohioans. I know this is something that they're still developing, getting off the ground. First meeting was last week, where Tom Wickham, our senior vice president of state and local policy, was briefing the group on the impacts of the speaker race on Ohio. And they're going to be holding a lot of other different types of educational events, and then developing a grassroots advocacy program that hopefully your chamber can take advantage of. So I encourage you to use these resources, whether it's through the U.S. Chamber, Ohio Chamber. Let us be helpful if you're looking to get an advocacy program off the ground. Last, I'll just say thank you again for your partnership, your leadership at the local level. Thank you for feeding us those stories and that information. And if you need anything, there's my email address. Please make sure, if you're not getting our emails now, that you let me know, because we do provide regular updates that you can repost, share with your members. Some of that education piece could be very easily done at the federal level. But thank you all. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rachel.